Hi, it's Lily's again. Um, I have started making my own homemade chai because I like chai, but generally it has caffeine and I can't have it. And my husband found a chai powder that you mix with your tea, and it was really good, but it was really high in sugar and it had spices and it wasn't organic or anything like that. So I decided that when that was gone, I wasn't going to get more and that I would learn to make it myself. So I read a bunch of stuff and I watched a video class that I took and then I kind of made it my own. So anyway, a bunch of people have been asking me to show them how I make chai. So I thought this was a good time to do it because yesterday I made some vanilla paste and in the pot there was residue from the vanilla. So I thought, oh, that'd be good in chai. So I put some water and simmered it this morning in that pan and got all the vanilla out and stuck it in this pan that I like to make my chai in. Um, so anyways, I'm going to turn this on to like basically sort of a medium low heat and let it start coming up to just a little bit of a simmer before I put my spices in, but I have to grind all my spices. So what I'm going to do, the spices I like to put, you don't have to put vanilla. You can kind of do it however you want, but I last time I made it, I did simmer a little bit of a vanilla bean in there and it was really good. So this should work good. And since we're going to strain it, it should be fine. So you put some peppercorns. This is a double batch because if I make it, my daughter and husband want some. So I put, just a couple of pinches of peppercorns, black peppercorns, and then a couple of pinches of cardamom seeds. You can use the pods, but I can't really find them around here, so I have seeds, which works just fine. And then a couple of cloves per batch. So you probably want 2 to 3 cloves. Cloves are pretty strong. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got like that one's small. So 6 for a double batch. And then cinnamon. You can take a cinnamon stick and just break a couple of pieces off. But I happen to have these cinnamon chunks that were for making like mulling spices, and I need to use them up. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that in there. So I just put a nice little pinch of that. And then with my mortar and pestle, I just kind of pound it and swirl it around. You just sort of do your wrist action and you want to keep it. This is not my favorite mortar and pestle. I have a big one that's got a rough interior that works much better for grinding spices, but it's so heavy that it's really hard to do it and then pour it into the pot. So I use the smaller one I have, but it's smooth inside, so it's a little bit harder to get it nice and smushed. So basically, I will show you when I'm done you don't have to have them fully ground, like you don't want fine ground, but you just want them broken up enough so that the spices get simmered into the water. And I've got 3 cups of water in here with the leftover dregs of the vanilla for a double batch. So you do 1.5 cups for a single batch. You want to heat your water up till it's just starting to simmer before you put your spices in. So normally I would say to go like this, but I find that when I do this, they jump out more. So I just sort of, just like that peppercorn did. So I just sort of push down a little bit and then kind of rub it around. And if I ever find a smaller mortar and pestle with a rough interior, I'm going to snatch it up. All right, let me see. All right, that's pretty good. The cinnamon chunks don't really break up very much like they would if it was a whole cinnamon stick piece. because they're really hard because they're like more dry than the cinnamon stick. So anyway, that's pretty much how it looks. So as soon as this shows some little bubbles around the edge, I will dump this in. And then the next step will be to put the ginger in. And while we're waiting for that to heat up, I will show you. I keep my ginger in the freezer so it looks a little wrinkled because it's defrosted. But I have a piece that was frozen that I had peeled already. I peeled too much last time, so I had a little chunk left. So anyway, if you want to peel ginger, you can just take a spoon and glide it along it, and it will take the peel right off. This one's a little bit harder because it's a little mushier because it had been defrosted. It was previously frozen. I usually peel it when it's frozen, so it makes it a little bit easier, but it'll just peel right off like that. I usually just do it over the sink, but I guess I can just do it here. But just rub it, it comes right off. All right. So I'm just going to peel a little section of this and then chunk it off. I end up making a mess, but that's okay. See, just peels right nice with the side of a spoon. So it's a real easy way to peel your ginger. So I'm just going to cut a little chunk of this because I needed a little bit more than what I had. That should be good. I want about approximately like 2 teaspoons worth for a double batch. So this isn't quite coming to a simmer, but you don't really want to turn the heat up. You want to keep it at a pretty steady heat. And it's starting to move, but it's not boiling yet. You really want just a few bubbles around the edge, like a little bit of a simmer. It's just not quite there. So while we wait, so the typical tea for chai is a black tea, usually like an Assam tea. I didn't have one, and I had some black tea that was not decaf, and I used some decaf and some of that the first time I made it, and I'm not supposed to have caffeine. I thought, well, it's not that much. Oh no, I was like, I had to go take a nap. It was horrible. So I just use what I happen to have is a black tea that's English breakfast tea that's decaf. And you want loose tea, but these are in tea bags. So I just cut them open and put them in there. And it's about 2 teaspoons of tea in one of these bags. And you want approximately 2 to 3 teaspoons per batch. So I'm going to use, because I like my tea a little stronger when I put the milk in. So I'm going to use 3 of these tea bags in there. So I'm just going to cut them open and dump the loose leaf into, okay. Okay, so I'm just waiting for this to come to boil. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to grab my strainer, because at the end we'll need a strainer. So I have a second pot like this that I will strain it into when I'm done to get all the spices and tea out. Just about there, just not quite. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. It's swirling around a little, so I'm going to put the spices in, and then I'm going to smush my ginger. And you don't need it like completely pulverized, but you want it kind of squished so that it really gives out its flavor into the tea water. Okay, so I've just sort of smushed it up into chunks, and I'm going to pop that in there with the spices. I'm going to let it come to a boil, like a rolling boil. Okay, I'm just going to set this aside. Okay, now, so I've just got my, I don't know, can you see? Okay, so I'm just got a lot of that black is the vanilla seeds, but I've got all the spices and the ginger in the water, and I'm just gonna let it keep heating up, but I'm gonna kind of stir it. And when I stir it, I'm using a ladle, and I'm just sort of tipping it and almost like folding it type of thing. Um, and that just helps get all the spice melding with the water. I'm just getting some of the vanilla off the side of the pot. So I'm just gonna kind of stir it around a little bit as it comes to a boil. You don't have to do it the whole time, but every once in a while just to keep the spices off the bottom of the pot and moving into the water. Um, so we're just gonna let that come to a boil. It does take a while. This is not as quick as, instant chai type of thing. Um, One thing that I haven't tried, but I've had an idea to do, is to basically make this up into the point where I add in the milk, and add in this. So basically, make this and then put my sweetener in and kind of cook it a bit and strain it and make like almost like a simple syrup tea concentrate. Um, and then I could refrigerate that, and then I could just heat my milk up or heat up the syrup, tea, whatever, if I want it hot, or if I want it cold, put it over ice and just mix some of this with enough milk and figure out the ratios. And then I wouldn't have to make it and take all this time every time I want to make it. So eventually I might try and do that, like quadruple the recipe and just make a big batch of the tea concentrate with the sweetener and the spices and keep it in the fridge and see how that works. Because then that would be pretty quick to heat up in the morning, and just add my milk. So we'll see. I'm going to play with it a little, but so far I've just been doing it this way when I have time, and it's delicious. I'm just going to kind of keep stirring till it comes to a boil. And you want a nice rolling boil before you put your tea in. And I usually have scissors here, and so here they are. So I'm just going to cut these open. Just lean them against here for now. So my daughter, we would ever go to the coffee shop that's on every corner. Um, she likes to get the chai tea with almond milk, and I can't have it because it's made with a concentrate that has caffeine. But I do like the flavors of chai, and I actually have made chai flavored lip gloss before, and it was really yummy. I love tea. We're tea people anyway, so I always have a bunch of tea in my house. So I could probably do this with other stuff, but generally it's black tea. And I may try and see if I can find an organic loose leaf black tea online, but I figured I'd use up what I had in my cupboard first. Oh yeah, that smells really good. Cinnamony. I smell the ginger. And I'm using the pot I have is stainless steel, so sometimes the handle does get hot, so I do have an oven mitt if I need it in order to touch the pot, but so far it's not too bad. But I'm starting to see some bubbles. It's starting to boil just a little, but I want a nice rolling boil before I put it in there. Okay, it's boiling, so I'm going to stick it in, start putting it in. It's not super fast, but it's boiling. Now I'm going to let it simmer with the tea, and you just kind of stir it the same way you do with the spices. Now you've got all this tea in here with your spices. You just keep stirring it. I think this English breakfast tea is not like quite as strong as the normal loose leaf Assam that is typical in chai, but it's been still delicious. And you can sweeten it, obviously to your taste. Get back up to a boil. Then I'm going to add in the almond milk. You can use whatever milk you want. You can use regular dairy milk. It's just I have two of my kids can't have milk, and my older son loves chai, and so usually, and I can drink dairy to some degree, but it doesn't always agree with me. So I do limited. So I generally just use almond milk. I have unsweetened almond milk. So I'm gonna put you you've got 3 cups of water and you want, it's boiling really rapidly now, so this is good. You have 3 cups of water and you want another 3 cups of milk for this double batch. I do almost to this pot has markings in it, so I can pour without really measuring right up to where it says 6 cups. And I go just below 6 cups, and then I'm going to add a tiny little bit of, and I need a clean spoon because I use that one for the ginger. A little bit of the fat part of coconut milk, only because almond milk is not very creamy, and so like normally if I was using milk, I'd use whole milk. So if you have, I know you can use like a oat milk, and they make like a full fat that has some kind of added fat into it. I am doing almond milk. You could do almost any kind of milk. Like if you did a rice milk, that's not very, it's a kind of a thin milk. So I add a little bit of the fat part of coconut milk, just to give it a little bit of a creamier mouthfeel. But I don't want to add too much because I feel like it overpowers the flavor of the spices in the tea. So, all right, so this is boiling. Just gonna stir it around. And the reason you don't want to like turn the heat up to get it to boil is that you want it just under, you want it under medium. And the reason is you want to give that tea time to steep. So if you turn it up so that it boils quickly, your tea has not had a chance to steep in with the spices and things, so it won't be as strong a flavor. So that's why you just sort of leave it on that lower temperature, to do that. So I'm going to pour in my almond milk. Oops, I don't want it to splash, so I'm going to control the pour a little bit. And you could add your sweetener before you add the milk or right after you add the milk. It really doesn't matter. And I'm using honey to sweeten it. You can use sugar. I've used sugar in the past one just to kind of compare. You could even use a little maple syrup if you want. It'll just give a stronger flavor. So I'm only adding a little bit of this in here, and I'm just going to stir it in so it melts. And just however to your taste is how you would want to do it. And then I'm just going to kind of stir this in here. I'm going to wait for this coconut milk fat to melt before I add my honey. I've got some raw honey here. I don't know, I didn't really measure, but it's approximately 3 tablespoons. And this is like 6 cups of chai, so that's not too bad. You can make it how sweet you want. And you can really add any kind of spices you want as far as, you can change the flavors up. You could add, you could do a pumpkin spice and add a little pumpkin puree and some maple syrup and extra cinnamon and maybe a dash of nutmeg. You can make a lot more vanilla and make like a vanilla chai. You can kind of do anything you want. So you just kind of stir it, and you're going to basically bring this back up to a boil, and you're going to boil it twice. I'm going to add the honey in, and this is raw honey, so it's very thick. So I'm going to see if I can get it all out of here. All right, I'm going to stir that a bit, get it off the spatula. You want to try and stir it till it melts because you don't want that honey to sit on the bottom of the pan and scorch. So I just opened this almond milk, so it was sort of a little chilly, but mostly room temperature because it was in my garage. So it might take it a little bit longer to come to a boil since it was cold. All right, this is pretty much off of here. So I'm going to put that in the sink. So I'm just going to stir now. I want to get all the spices and that tea mixed into the milk. I can't tip it too much because it's pretty full. But so here's how milky mine is. So you can kind of see. It smells good. I can smell the almond from the almond milk. Might have to try it with cow milk at some point. Buying my almond milk at Costco, but I actually would like to find one that doesn't have as many gums and stuff in it. So I was gonna look, but I might just start making my own. We'll see. I don't know that I want to do one more thing, but I know that it's not so good for you with some of this one's unsweetened, and the main reason why I buy this one is because it does not have added folic acid, which we can't have. So it's hard to, a lot of them do have that. So, but this one does have locust bean gum and some other gums in them, which I don't love, but otherwise it's just almonds and vitamins that they add in water. Just want to make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. Okay, so we're just going to kind of stir every once in a while, but let this come up to a boil. And as it comes up to a boil, it's going to kind of almost have the foamy bubble, and it's going to start creeping up. And you don't want it to overflow, so when it gets to that point, I might just turn it up a tad to get it there a little bit quicker. So I can turn it up at this point, especially because my milk was cold. A little bit. But so when it comes to a boil and you see that foam kind of rising, when it gets just almost to the top, but not quite to the top, and with almond milk it won't get as high as it will with regular milk, you want to turn it down, and then you want to turn it back up and let it come to a boil again, and then you can turn the heat off. So it's kind of almost like a double boil. And the stuff is starting to move on the underneath. I can see from the top isn't boiling yet, but I can see that the underneath is moving. So it shouldn't be too much longer before I start seeing some bubbles come to the surface. That's one thing about chai, it's sort of a lesson in patience because it takes time. I'm just going to stir. Because I added that coconut milk, there's a little like layer of fat that's on the top of mine. But seeing little bubbles. It's funny to see all the spices and stuff like moving around underneath the surface. So I have it basically on medium now. The handle's getting hot though, so I'm probably gonna need this in order to pour it. So we're just kind of waiting. I'm sure when I tell my daughter I made chai, she'll want a cup. So I got 2 mugs out. My youngest 2 don't like it for some reason, even though it's delicious. But my older son and my husband and my daughter and I all love it. I had intended on making this morning when I got up, but I had to go to the chiropractor and I ran out of time by the time I did everything else I needed to do this morning. And then I came home and thought I'd do it, but then we had a plumber coming and he showed up early, and then it turned into more of a plumbing ordeal. So he just left. So I'm like, I gotta make my chai. I got all the stuff out. It's a beautiful day out. I want to try and get outside for a little bit if my leg quits hurting. Okay, I'm seeing a little bit of foam, but not the boiling yet. And I'll kind of try and show you. I'll take it off the heat and show you the foam. So this is just at 6 cups on this. This one has liters. My other pot, this one has cup markings. So either way. I like this one better because when I make a double batch, it's basically 1.4 liters or 6 cups. And this one has like 1 liter and 1.5 liters, so I'd have to like guesstimate. So I like to make it in this pot, but then I strain it into that one. And I just got these pots on Amazon because I liked that they had a pour spout and a handle and were small, just the right size to make chai than trying to, I have like a really big, oh, it's starting to boil, really big saucepan and a like medium saucepan and then one that's like too small. So I don't really have like the perfect, I have like 2 that are similar sizes, like 4-quart and 3-quart. And so I didn't want that big. Okay, see, the foam is starting to come up. When it gets just to the top, I will get this off the heat. I don't know how much you can see from that angle that the foam's coming up to the top. But here, I'll kind of try and show you quickly. See, it's really boiling and there's foam. All right, so now I took, basically instead of turning it down, I took it off the heat. So I'm going to put it back on the heat. Whoops, this smaller one, a little better, it's more flexible. All right, it's almost to the top and I'm going to turn it off. All right, so now I'm going to strain it. I just have a fine mesh strainer over my other pot. And as you get to the bottom, there's a little bit left in there. I just kind of swirl it to kind of get all that dredge out. Because you want all those spices to come out. There we go. We got most of it. There's just a tiny, tiny bit left in there. Now I'm going to, hold on a second. I'm going to rinse this pot out real quick because I still need it. You want to rinse out as much as you can. So now I'm going to push all the good liquid out of these dregs. Kind of stir it around, push it out. You want to get all that flavored goodness out of there. Okay. I'm not seeing too much more. So I'm just going to set this in the sink because I'll probably go just dump it in my compost bin. All right, so now I want to aerate this. So this pot is hot. This one is not so hot. So I want to aerate it, and you can either get like an aeration thing like you would, like if you have a little thing that does aeration, you can use that. But another way to do it is just to pour it back and forth in the pot. So I start at the bottom and just kind of up, and you see it forms bubbles. See if I can do it closer to. Then you pour it into the other pot. There's always going to be a little bit of sediment in there that was too fine to pass a sieve. I mean, you could, if you really don't like that, you could do it into a coffee filter. And I just do it back and forth a couple of times just to get it nice and foamy. So that should be good. And then we just pour it in our mugs and drink it, and there's your chai.